In today's episode of Today in World War II, February 26th, the Soviets advance ever closer to Viipuri. Franco in Spain makes a smart decision. The RAF finally knocks out the battle cruiser Gneisenau. The Afrika Korps in Tunisia makes its final offensive, launches its final offensive in North Africa. The Polish government in exile rejects Britain's decision to try to negotiate the post-war borders without consulting them. And finally, the American troops officially capture Corregidor from the Japanese in Manila Bay in the Philippines. Let's get started. Okay, so on February 26, 1940, as I keep saying, the end game is happening. The Soviets have got their act together. They are now an unstoppable machine. They are attacking every day. Their goal right now is to capture Viipuri, which is was the provincial capital of the Karelian Isthmus. It was the last major city, last major object on the Karelian Isthmus before they reach what we call the borders now of Finland, where they could just spread out and take all the roads and just go, and it'd be much more difficult to stop them. So they were getting closer and closer and closer. Now, I mean, the Finns were fighting like crazy to keep this from happening. The Finnish 23rd Division counterattacked, and the Finns had some tanks. They weren't the same class as the Soviet tanks. They did have eight Mark 8 light tanks, and in this Battle of Hokaniemi, they did destroy three Soviet tanks, but they lost all of their tanks. They lost all eight. Okay, so um, right now they're just trying to buy time, buy time, buy time. Um, I'd like to buy your subscription to my channel here, but I'm not allowed to. So I'm going to obey the rules and not give in to just blatant bribery for you. But I will ask you. I'll ask you in a very nice way. Subscribe to the channel. What's it going to hurt you, right? Just click subscribe on the button. Click the bell that will notify you whenever I drop a video. And it works. It works for you. It doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't require more than 15 seconds. I timed it. 15 seconds is a world record. All you gotta do is just do that, and then you'll help me out, okay? On February 26, 1941, Generalissimo Francisco Franco of Spain had been cajoled, pleaded with, requested heartfeltly by Hitler on February 6th of 1941 that Spain would join the war with them. After all, why shouldn't it? They're all a bunch of dirty fascists, right? Well, you had Hitler in Germany, you had Mussolini, you had, and then the third wheel here would be Franco. Franco was a lot cagier than the other two. He wasn't a megalomaniac. He knew that what he becoming the Generalissimo of Spain was his high water mark. He did not want to become a living um, example of the Peter principle, where you rise to the level of your incompetence. In this case, he was just fine being the generalissimo, and he was gonna just sit there and control that country and censor it and do the typical right-wing repression, all that stuff. He was going to do that until he died in the mid 70s. Okay, so he was smart enough to refuse Hitler's order, and not only did he refuse to enter the war, but he also refused to let Hitler have permission to send his troops through Spain down to take Gibraltar, which was very good for the Allied war effort, because closing down the Mediterranean from the Atlantic would not have been a good thing for any of us. Let's put it that way. But it's always a good thing for everybody if you like this video and you leave a comment, because the big bad YouTube algorithm is watching its big brother, right? And if it sees engagement, if it sees a comment, if it sees a like, it's going to reward us by showing my content to more people's feeds. And that's what grows my channel. So I would appreciate it if you could help me out there. Thank you. On February 26, 1941, the German battle cruiser Gneisenau was finally knocked out by the IRF. Boy, I tell you what, that Gneisenau, it was a thorn in the British and the Royal Navy side, the merchant vessel side. Like I said, its sworn duty was to go after the merchant vessels, not attack the Royal Navy, not get into these surface battles where it was not going to be able to win. It was always going to be outnumbered, outgunned by the Royal Navy. So it was job was to get in and get out, sink some merchies, and get back to port. Well, in this case, it had been damaged in the if you just remember like a few weeks ago, the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau had made this mad dash from Brest through the English Channel into Germany, into Kiel, and it was in dry dock there having that mine damage being repaired. Well, the RAF attacked the dry dock in Kiel and it was heavily, heavily damaged. It was bombed and it was actually decommissioned later in the year. It was damaged so badly that it never returned to service. So the Brits could check that one off the list of targets for these surface raiders. And on February 26, 1943, the Afrika Korps, the 5th Panzer Army, launched its last major offensive in North Africa before the Afrika Korps surrendered as a whole in May, just a couple months away. And it gained some ground, but it wasn't enough. Again, they're at the point now where they could never, the idea of a strategic victory was over. All they could do was make some tactical advances, improve their position, but from a strategic point of view, i.e., winning the war or at least winning the campaign, that was over with. As soon as Rommel lost at El Alamein, that was done, right? There was no way he was going to win. So this was just the last gasp effort, and they went out fighting. Let's put it that way, okay? And on February 26, 1944, the Polish government in exile was very, very angry at the British government's desire that they agree to a post-war border where they were not consulted. It's their freaking country, right? But the British decided they were going to negotiate on their behalf because they're the little brothers, right? Great Britain is a world power, and they know what's best for the Poles. Well, yeah, how would you react if some other country did that to you? Well, they defied it and they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to recognize the Curzon line on Poland's eastern frontier as our border. Look, the fix was in. The Poles were going to get screwed. It was, I mean, it's just geography. I mean, my gosh, I feel for them. You got the Germans on the left, you got the Russians on the right. At this point in time, it's the Soviets, but it's the same difference. Wow. I mean, it's a wonder they ever had any freedom at all between those two uh, Nimrods, right? So it was just going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, and they got screwed more than anybody in the war. So I feel bad for them. Finally, on February 26, 1945, American troops captured Corregidor. They had MacArthur had dropped paratroopers onto Corregidor previously. Lots of fighting went on there. The Japanese never surrendered. They fought to the last person. But today, on February 26, 1945, was the official announcement that Corregidor had been liberated and had been freed from all Japanese resistance. And it was now in the hands of the Americans, in whose hands it was in back, on December 7, 1941, when the whole war started and the Japanese started their ill-fated war and offensive against the Americans and the British and the Dutch and the French in the Pacific Theater. So it was nice to put a rubber stamp on that. I'll put a rubber stamp now on this video. I want to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.